All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, May 24th, 2016. And this says, before the first cup of jewels here on UCY.TV. Happy Tuesday, everyone. It is a beautiful, sunny and 70 degrees here in upstate New York. And my plants are all looking, smiling. I just went out there and everybody's perky. Morning sun is the best. So where did we leave off yesterday? Well, struggling with my browsers, but we'll try. We called the show Synthetic Gene Injections to modify your DNA to keep you healthy. We read a pretty disturbing story, and I would have to say it was more than pretty disturbing. This is one of the most disturbing stories I've read in a long time, where they are literally talking in the New York Times about replacing your immune system with a synthetic one. And don't worry about it, because this synthetic immune system will be able to react and respond to any threat that they program it up for. There's a couple different ways they're doing this. We looked at this one that they started with HIV, and now they're going on with Ebola, malaria, flu, and hepatitis. And remember, I told you that DARPA had put out a request for proposal looking for a shape-shifting, and those were the exact words they used, a shape-shifting defense system for the immune system. And this is very much like what they were asking for. But then we found out at the end of the show that IBM has also started down the path of building a synthetic immune system, and theirs is a little bit different. It identifies specific proteins as opposed to the one that they were working on at the Scripps Institute that they talked about in the New York Times article, that literally went in with synthetic DNA and replaced and merged with your DNA to turn you into some sort of human 2.0 freak. The IBM solution would go in and identify, very much like your immune system, certain proteins to target, and then take it out, make it non-virulent, neutralize it somehow. But what is really, I would have to say, important about all of this and to pay attention to, is the fact that we went through the whole history yesterday over the last 10 plus years, looking at how this is all tied to DARPA, biowarfare, fake pandemics, get you scared. They've been using our money, they've been using our tax dollars to develop all of this that now they're going to make us take. And like I said yesterday, this DNA upgrade that Scripps Institute is working on to give you this new synthetic immune system, this is part of this universal Blue Angel-esque type program that they've been working on for a long time, where it'll be able to morph and respond in real time in the future without any future vaccines. It'll be able to change itself and recognize new threats without any outside influence. Now, that sounds all well and good, except I know I don't want to be the first in line, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, or the fifth even, to be getting this synthetic DNA injection that then is going to go in and modify my DNA to then have this new synthetic shape-shifting search and destroy immune system. And especially as someone who suffered from years of autoimmune diseases and had to get my body and immune system back on track, they'd always told me that my immune system was in collapse when I was younger. And, now we understand it all. When we went through the last 2 weeks with the gut microbiome and the destruction by antibiotics and antibiotic properties of other things such as glyphosate in our food, and we showed that whole cascade of diseases that, there's all kinds of things that can happen besides just not being able to digest food properly or leaky gut or immune system tanking, but cancers and brain issues, mental issues, depression. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I think that there's so much of our daily grief that is caused by us being told wrong, by the way we've been living our lives and the way that we've been told, and here's all the products and here's all the things you do. All this stuff has been sending us down the very wrong path. And now these are the same people who are publishing stories in the New York Times talking about synthetic immune systems that literally go in and rewrite your DNA. And they're the ones that are telling us to step up. It's for our own good. You need to get the vaccine, Johnny. Otherwise, you're going to die when all these newfangled 21st century diseases just appear out of the blue because of climate change. Wink. We're supposed to be trusting these same individuals, these same doctors that led you down the wrong path, these same researchers that just now are coming out going, oh, guess what? All those years, that whole generation, we told you not to eat fat. And now we have an entire generation with massive amounts of Alzheimer's and other diseases because, oh, whoops, ulterior sclerosis because, whoops, guess what? Fat was good for you. I just saw over the weekend, some big study came out now. Salt is good for you, too. We're electrical. Salt helps electrical contacts. I always thought, I don't like salt that much. I don't do a lot of it. But the Himalaya salt I have been, and when I'm cooking, I'll do a couple cracks. I have the chunks of the whole salt in a grinder. Or every once in a while, like if I have a stew or soup, I'll do a couple cracks on there. But salt, when you have like a battery, that's why you got lemon juice and what's the other thing you put in there? I don't know. Salt is a conductor. You need salt. That's what potassium and magnesium. Magnesium is a metal. Potassium is a salt. It's one of the reasons why potassium is so important and why you get numb when you don't have enough of it. Right? Eat your bananas. You gotta have salt. So anyway, they've been giving us a crock of shit, and honestly, I don't know if it's that they just didn't know, or did they really know? So they wanted to make sure that we weren't strong and healthy and had all of our mental faculties. What did we just see too? Oh God, guys, it's hard in the morning. First thing, I literally have had only 2 sips of coffee. We saw something that causes you to your brain not to grow new brain cells anymore too. Wait a minute, we did that. Antibiotics, yeah, and anything that has an antibiotic property such as glyphosate, because it's again connected directly to your gut bacteria. Antibiotics kill your gut bacteria, and then you don't grow any new brain cells in the memory department. All right, so let's trust all these lunatics. So here's a story from April, and I've connected to this a few times. Shape-shifting vaccines wanted for killer viruses. So this is when DARPA first announced this is what they were looking for. Zika, Ebola, dengue, woohoo, oh my, influenza, and chikungunya. These deadly viruses are crafty organisms that can mutate inside their host, quickly outdating any vaccine and rendering it useless. Now, like I said, we spent a lot of time yesterday tracing the history that I've seen personally just through things I've paid attention to. I really got into the whole vaccine research back in the 90s when my cat, and we've talked about this, got the vaccine related sarcoma in his leg from the 3 years rabies vaccine. And at that time, Cornell University was doing a study because they were seeing this correlation between these sarcomas and I guess it was two vaccines. It was the 3 years rabies and the feline leukemia virus I was reading. And there's a whole wiki about the story I told you guys. No, I saw. But my cat's leg, which ended up having to get amputated because it was there was nothing left inside pretty much, became part of that study. And they've proven that there is a complete link between these sarcomas and the adjuvant, the aluminum, whatever they were using in there. And it's interesting to note that, I mean, even back then and even before the 90s when they started really putting serious research into this, they had known way before that. They had changed the injection site for animals to go from the base of the neck and the back, right in the scruff of the neck, where they used to when we were kids. That's where we used to give cats and dogs shots. But now, and that was back in the 90s, they changed it where they started giving them in the leg, and they would give some in the one leg and some in the other. And the doctor told me the reason that was because they had suspected that the vaccines were causing the sarcomas. But when they gave it to the injections in the scruff of the neck of the animal, it caused sarcoma, but it caused it in the spine. Well, not going to be able to do any type of amputation at the scruff of the neck. It's called a beheading. So they changed the way they did it, and they started giving it to the leg because the leg can come off. And when they do some in one leg and some of the other, they were able then to figure out which one of the vaccines were causing the cancer. But my end result of telling you that is I started very young. I was in my early 20s when I first said, what? This was my baby, my best little buddy, Oliver, my cat. At a year old, ended up with this horrible cancer. And the doctor was telling me, and my vets were good. I've had a couple really good vets that actually wasn't on board with this mass vaccine schedule or any of it. Didn't force me to do anything. And, you know, the thing is, anytime, now this original doctor, they were a bunch of college graduates that were all still doing research with Cornell. So that's why I get some of the inside scoop when that happened, and that's why they were asking lots of questions, because they were young still. They still had that spark. It hadn't been beaten out of them yet. It was also still the 90s, so they weren't told to shut up or lose their jobs back then. My vet now owns his own practice, and quietly, when you're in the exam room, you can talk to him about your indoor cats and whether or not all of these injections that are recommended by the American Veterinary Association are necessary. And he will tell you that no, he does not believe so. And they don't make me get my cats vaccinated because my cats don't go outside. I got the first round way back when. And that's it. That's it. But, you know, what this taught me at a very young age is that doctors don't know everything, even though they pretend they do. And they're still doing research. And I at least know the sarcoma thing was something that they weren't expecting. But it also got me that they had known for at least 10 years or so that there was some sort of suspected link. Yet they continued, and they still to this day give the 3 years rabies vaccine. They continued to use that prophylaxis even though they knew that it was causing disease in some of the animals that received it. You know, and then took the leg for research. Well, hey, guess what? We're going to become the kitty and the dog or the poor little mousey they've been doing horrible stuff to in almost every story we read. Because now we got the synthetic immune system that's going to, hey, cure you of everything. And every day we have some new disease out there that's going to be scary. In an effort to stay one step ahead of these formidable foes, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, more affectionately known as DARPA, has recently announced a new project to develop shape-shifting vaccines that cannot be outsmarted. Now, how about, here's the other thing. How about when shape-shifting vaccines that are inside of you All you smart people who want to go take your vaccines, I think you should be first in line for this. Let me know how it goes. If things all work out 20, 30, 40 years down the line, maybe, just maybe, you might be able to convince me. But until then, go to the front of the line because this isn't for me. What happens when these shape-shifting vaccines go awry? What happens when there's a mutation inside of you that can't be controlled and they decide to start gobbling up your own cells? What then? Especially if they cannot be outsmarted. This new DARPA project is called Intercept, and it was created to outpace evolving pathogens with a therapy that can adapt in real time, shape-shifting as fast as the targets do. Now, I told you, this was back in 2006 when they were already telling us about some of the universal flu vaccine that was in development. That was some of the stuff they were messing with down at Texas A&M and playing with the tobacco to be able to produce the antibodies as opposed to how they traditionally have done vaccinations where they grow it in egg. I think they grow it in the egg yolk, not the albumin. I don't know. At least that's what I always envisioned in my head, that they'd have these little eggs. They injected them. I think that is what they do. They inject the egg with the bacteria or the virus or whatever it is, and that's pretty much just like agar gum in a petri dish. The egg helps it grow, and it grows inside the egg. But it is very inefficient. I absolutely agree with that. And like they say, that, you know, especially for a flu, you're guessing at what next year's flu is going to be. And sometimes you got it and sometimes you don't. But you look at your global patterns as to what's coming and what's out there, and then you guess at what your next year's combination is going to be. So I can absolutely see where some scientists said, hey, let's come up with an idea so we don't have to come up with some new vaccine that maybe isn't going to work next year every single year, where it's slow and it's expensive. And if we have another pandemic, think about the children, because this will be able to get our strategic stockpiles at home. We will have more than enough vaccine. If it's universal, doesn't matter what it is. Just here, step right up, everyone. The bad news is that when we put together these two pieces that I've learned about 10 years apart, one in 2006 at that FEMA thing, universal flu vaccine, and two, this New York Times article about a synthetic immune system. And now we're seeing that this thing from 10 years ago is right out there in your face. Yep, here's the program. Everyone, shape-shifting vaccines that can mutate in any way, shape, or form to protect you against anything and everything. This is not good, people. Not if this has anything to do with the synthetic DNA that's going to literally change you forever. This new DARPA project called Intercept was created to outpace evolving pathogens with a therapy that can adapt in real time, shape-shifting as fast as the targets do. Cannot be outsmarted, they said. Intercept, but isn't starting from zero, fortunately. Yes, fortunately. The agency plans to build on an existing lab-grown snippet of genetic material called TIPS, and that is short for therapeutic interfering particles, packaged in protein shells familiar to a person's immune system. These little guys can operate like incredibly persuasive secret agents for the body. Now remember, too, we talked about how they're doing a lot of this stuff. They put it inside a virus. They suck the guts out of a virus, and they put it inside a virus. Or, you know, go to GlaxoSmithKline, whoever's putting out that Gardasil vaccine, and they'll just make virus-like particles. You know, particles that look like viruses, but they're not. They're synthetic. Your body thinks they are. But when they suck the guts out of these cells, I guess you'd call them, that the body recognizes, and then they put their own payload inside. Then they set it loose in the body. It acts as a Trojan horse. It sneaks in. It outwits the body's defenses and immune system. So they're like little hackers. They're hacking the human body. It sneaks in. It gets into the cell. That's why it's so good to use a virus, because viruses are so good at getting into cells, and then replicates everywhere. Little secret agents, like they call them. Tips: enter a host cell in a way that is similar to viruses. So these aren't quite viruses, but similar. However, they do not contain the genetic material designed to hijack a cell and force it to replicate more copies like viruses do. Well, phew! Good thing I explained that. So this looks like a virus. It's kind of like a virus, but it's got its guts sucked out. So it doesn't do what a virus would do. No, it does what DARPA's going to program it to do and add to the payload. Instead, tips lie in wait until a virus infects a cell. And then at that point, it begins to self-replicate and compete with the virus. Oh my God. Overloading your body's defenses, it sounds like. I mean, honestly, this could be, if you understand how autoimmune works and how your body's immune system attacks your own body and your own tissues because it recognizes it's foreign. And a lot of that, I really think, has to do with, I mean, you get this cascading cycle of events that leads to leaky gut, so your food isn't being processed properly, but it all comes from the glyphosate, the antibiotics, the things like that then are causing the gut bacteria not to work properly, that then are allowing the leaky gut, that then are allowing organisms across that blood barrier and into the cells without being properly processed or stopped. And that's where the autoimmune comes from, because now your immune system is going red alert, red alert, red alert. There is poison and it is everywhere. We don't know what's causing it. We don't know where it came from, but we're seeing it all the cells. Well, let's react to illness. Okay, what do? We inflame. Inflammation is the root to all disease. And so when you start having these inflammations all over, you have disease issues start. So alopecia areata, lupus, multiple sclerosis, where you have issues with your myelin sheath, thyroiditis of some kind, Hashimoto's or Graves' disease. That's all caused by autoimmune. So, I mean, you could see how this could all happen, but the fact that these tips, as part of this DARPA intercept program, would go in, wait until the virus infects a cell, and then go to red alert and start replicating everywhere and shape-shifting. This sounds like a recipe for biological disaster if that was inside your body. Who wants some Trojan horse self-replication? Who knows even what synthetic crap inside of them? Think of tip-filled envelopes, oh, here he even says it, as tiny Trojan horses, says DARPA program manager Jim Gimlet in a press release about Intercept. Instead of containing warriors, though, they contain pretenders that ultimately outnumber real disease-causing viruses and interfere with their ability to replicate. And they're making this like a war zone, of course, because it's DARPA. DARPA does all of the military special programs, finding out how to kill people in creative ways. This is frightening. Because tips are made from genetic material that have the potential to evolve alongside viruses, too. Tips aren't quite ready for deployment, though. DARPA still has to develop ones that stay dormant in uninfected cells and then start replicating fast enough to outcompete viruses once an infection happens. What happens when the infection's gone? What happens when you've self-replicated these tips so they fill your whole body and overwhelm the virus so the virus can't eat or feed or anything? What happens to your immune system when it's so overloaded that there's so much there it doesn't know what to do? This just sounds beyond dangerous. No, I don't want any of these solutions. And now we have 3 of synthetic immune systems. Early DARPA-funded studies seem promising, and engineering tips reduce the viral loads by nearly 20-fold for cells growing in cultured dishes, says DARPA. They've clearly done a lot of recon, and now it's time to prepare the troops for battle when it comes to viruses like Zika and Ebola. They say the only way to destroy those are from the inside. So what a perfect excuse for mad science gone mad. Right, we said that yesterday. Oh, measles, oh, Ebola, oh, Zika, dengue. We have to mount an attack and come up with these newfangled ways because it's so dangerous. I want to find here that Blue Angel program. When I first started doing radio in 2011, 2012, Madison Rupert had done a story about the Blue Angel program. And this is the program that FEMA class was talking about, but I think it's morphed now into this Intercept program. Because listen, DARPA's Blue Angel, Pentagon prepares millions of vaccines against future global flu. Yes, future global flu, wink. That's been genetically modified and published, so it'll kill hundreds of thousands of millions of more people at a 99.999% effectiveness rate, thanks to CRISPR or whatever they did to it. And the Pentagon's DARPA lab has announced a milestone, but it doesn't involve drones or death missiles. This story, by the way, is from July 27th, 2012. Scientists at the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency says that they have produced 10 million doses of an influenza vaccine in only 1 month's time. In a press release out of the agency's office this week, scientists with DARPA say that they've reached an important step in being able to combat a flu pandemic that might someday, wink, decimate the Earth's population. Guys, I'm telling you, what I mentioned yesterday, as far as this universal vaccine, the shape-shifting, DNA-changing vaccine, we've now read 3 different stories about projects they're working on. And my visions for where all these dots are connecting, like, whoops, one day, we've tried 10, 12 times to get a good pandemic going. It hasn't quite happened. Petered out every time. But now we're ready. And they're going to let something go. They're going to have a couple typhoid Marys stand in a big major airport or something, and it's going to start spreading like wildfire. And the only cure, because it's going to be like a pig, cow, dog, mosquito, some sort of mutant flu virus, like the last time that happened. They're like, wow, we've never seen these combined in nature before naturally. Well, no, because they came out of a lab somewhere. But this new one is going to be so virulent that there will be nothing you can do. There will be no natural remedy. There will be no vaccine. And the only way you will be saved, you and your family will be saved, is, whoa, Project BioShield. Thank goodness we stockpiled all kinds of experimental vaccines that just might work, wink. And they're going to get people to line up for this. And if you want it, if you want to live, if you want to be human 2.0, you'll get that vaccine. But if you don't, well, human 1.0 was nice knowing you. but it's time for the 21st century. You don't have to go get your vaccine if you don't want to. But we have no room for anti-vaxxers anymore, and it's going to be curtains for all of us. And I'm telling you, these dots all connect. This story from 2012 pretty much outlines exactly what we've been saying, and I'm sure that this is one of the reasons why. I mean, when I went through the whole progression yesterday of how all these things happen, right? We looked at all these different quote-unquote pandemics over the last 10 years or so. And we looked at DARPA and the stuff that DARPA's doing. This Blue Angel program is this now shape-shifting nightmare that they're getting ready to start testing. In a press release out of the agency's office this week, back in July of 2012, scientists with DARPA said that they have reached an important step in being able to combat a pandemic flu that might someday decimate Earth's population. And by working with Metageico, now they've come up a whole bunch of times. They were the ones involved in the Ebola virus. Metageico is the one that they've been working with the plants. And now they're the ones that are involved in some of this new mad science with synthetic everything. By working with Metageico, and didn't we find out Bill and Melinda Gates was somehow involved? I think that was on Friday. The Pentagon's cutting-edge research laboratory says that they have used a massive harvest of tobacco plants to help produce a plethora of flu-fighting vaccines. So, enter the tobacco. And now the tobacco is growing all kinds of newfangled genetically modified synthetic DNA for new mad science. Forever vaccines. Forever vaccines that change you forever. Synthetic immune systems. And here, even look at this. Testing confirmed that in a single dose of an H1N1 VLP, you know what that stands for? VLP is virus-like particle. Again, these synthetic viruses that they can load like a little Trojan horse with whatever they choose and then inject into you so your body then allows this virus to get into cells as it's looking for cracks and infect you with, of course, their cure. But testing confirmed that a single dose of an H1N1 virus-like particle influenza vaccine candidate induced protective levels of hemagglutinin antibodies in an animal model when combined with what? Oh, a standard aluminum adjuvant. Yes, those standard aluminum adjuvants that what? Oh, caused sarcoma in my cat's leg in the 1990s. The agency writes, while still noting, though, that the equivalent dose required to protect humans from natural disease can only be determined by future prospective clinical trials. Researchers have before relied on using chicken eggs to harvest compounds to use the influenza vaccines, and in the future, an outbreak requiring scientists to step up a solution as soon as possible, they have now turned to tobacco plants to help produce because, with this global climate change, we have diseases mutating so fast we can't even keep up with them. So we need to be able to whip out vaccines in a hurry. I mean, this isn't funny at all. It's so disturbing that I don't even know how to react to this anymore. And if you try to explain this to anyone that's close to you, your friends, your family, a teacher, a doctor, even a doctor, they will look at you like you are a complete, utter freaking lunatic. Because it sounds lunatic. Guess what? It's not. This is the shit our government and our research labs we're funding with our tax dollars are building to be used on you and me and Johnny. Vaccinating susceptible populations during the initial stage of a pandemic is critical to containment. Says Dr. Alan McGill, DARPA program manager, in an official statement. We're looking at plant-based solutions to vaccine production as a more rapid and efficient alternative to the standard egg-based technology, and the research is very promising. The World Health Organization has also gone on record to say that as much as half of the people on the planet could be affected by the next pandemic in the future. So you guys better hurry up. Isn't that same World Health Organization that then it came out? There were a bunch of whistleblowers that came out after this fake H1N1 pandemic, quote unquote, and said that much of it, and the whole declaration of it being a pandemic, was because of pressure of the pharmaceutical industry on the World Health Organization to sell vaccines. Yeah, that did come out. Don't trust any of these assholes. None of them. They're all in on it. All of them. And you know what? Doctors get kickbacks too. And so do states. When they require a state to have so many kids vaccinated before they go to school or before a certain age or whatever, those are all potential profits that are already on the board as being chalked up for a pharmaceutical company's bottom line for that year. They know through the census how many kids are going to school and how many are required at this age to get that vaccine. So that means we're going to sell 10 million doses in Montana this year and 27 million in New York. The schools get money for that. And depending on whose Gardasil vaccine you pimp to unsuspecting parents for their 9 and 10-year-old daughters and sons, you probably get a Hawaiian vacation from the pharmaceutical company that's doing better. If you sell 10,000 doses, just like they used to do when we were doing distribution and technology, the salespeople got what were called spiffs. The manufacturer would come out. It might only be a day, it might be a week. They had a promo going on. If you sold 100 of these hard drives, you'd get a spiff. Maybe it was a $10 bill. And you got entered sometimes to win the big prize, which would be the trip to the Super Bowl, all expense paid. But they did that on a weekly basis. We would have spiffs from all these vendors. Techs, we didn't really get in on that. There was the salespeople. But every once in a while we would. Some of the big server manufacturers we wouldn't get spiffs specifically, but we would get gear. If we recommended 10,000 servers that, were the new model, let's say, we might get a free hard drive or something from that same vendor. Or we might be entered to win a trip to the Super Bowl, all expense paid. I mentioned that because I won one of those for my 30th birthday. It was pretty neat in San Diego. I got to go. And I've shared my birthday with the Super Bowl my entire life. So it was kind of like a screw you to the Super Bowl. I got a free trip for my birthday. But anyway, they did that in technology. And we're seeing now there's just so much overlap. This whole 21st century medicine now. Screw the FDA. Get them out of the way. Let's get this quote unquote life-saving medicine out into the hands of the people before we've tested it. And then write a case study. We'll target the desperate and the dying, so no one will care if it doesn't work out. And we at least gave them a chance. But this whole case study thing, this whole spiff thing, that's how it works, man. I'm telling you. So don't think that your doctor has your best interest at heart when you're questioning ingredients on a vaccination and they're telling you that, XYZ brand is better than ABC brand, because I'll guarantee you somewhere along the way, there's probably a perk to XYZ over ABC, and they're hoping to get their new Lexus or their free gas for a year. I don't know. Anyway, all right, let's look at the last of this Blue Angel program. Then I don't know. We got more stuff. We're going to maybe look at some banana vaccines. Through DARPA's previously established Blue Angel program, and again, this is back from the days of Bushy, researchers have spent several years searching for new ways to produce mass quantities of vaccine grade protein that could be used to combat what they say are very real, emerging, and novel biological threats. Yeah, you know why? They were emerging biological threats because they already were messing around with stuff such as CRISPR in the lab. They already were messing around with level 4 biohazard biowarfare agents at all these different labs and shipping them all over the place. How many stories have you done about that? Oops, the anthrax wasn't ever really killed. But the DOD shipped it to hundreds of labs everywhere thinking that it had been deactivated. You know, stuff like that. But I mean, even worse, don't think that they haven't been engineering like instant death in the lab for a lot of years, at least since the 40s, and maybe even before then. And it's not just us. It's Russia, it's China, it's rogue nations. And now it's Johnny in his parents' basement with the DIY CRISPR kits. They knew this was coming. This is a big boon for big pharma that's been rolled into now big medicine that's been rolled into Department of Defense. It's all about keeping you safe. That's all been rolled into technology. That's all been rolled into a big global control system. Guys, they have zipped the bag shut. There's no fresh air up in that hole anymore at the top. And we are now canaries in the coal mine, sitting here waiting for them to flick that last domino. And this new shape-shifting immune system is going to be their solution so you can live after whatever horrible bioterror agent that whoops accidentally gets loose, or whoops, those damn pesky terrorists letting it go. I'm telling you guys, this is not good at all. And even if you had a level 4 biosuit, what are you going to do? It's pretty crazy. Here's a story I ran across while I was doing the notes yesterday from 2014 out of Forbes, titled Ebola Secret Serum, Small Biopharma, the Army, and Big Tobacco. And again, this talks about ZMAP and that MAP Pharmaceuticals, again, another company that's been involved with DARPA, using these tobacco plants and antibodies, playing with Bill and Melinda Gates. But the interesting part about this is that down below here, there's a section called Dividends of Biowarfare Research. And this is exactly what I've been saying. The product first described yesterday by CNN, and this is this antibody against Ebola created inside of tobacco plants, is the result of a convoluted convergence of U.S. and Canadian federal agencies and industrial partners that is typical for treatments of potential value against biowarfare and bioterrorism. So Canada, you guys aren't off the hook either. You've been complicit in this whole thing with us. I'm sure we coerced you, though, so I'll give you that. As with other companies working on small molecules and biologicals against Ebola and other hemorrhagic fever viruses, MAP Bio, which is the company that was creating that ZMAP, MAP Bio was the beneficiary of grants and contracts from federal agencies, including the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, more affectionately known as NIAID, the Department of Defense Advanced Research Projects, which is DARPA, and the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, which is DTRA. That's a new one for me. The U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases has also been critical and a critical driver of much of this work as they maintain their biosafety level 4 facility where, in Frederick, Maryland. Yes, what do we remember was in Frederick, Maryland that got inked and closed and all those diseases cleaned up back in the early 1970s when Nixon inked that paper? Yes. It's where our biowarfare program was. Fort Detrick, Maryland. And they have an extensive expertise with non-human primates as a model for infectious diseases. Right. That was Plum Island, guys. This is where a lot of the research, it's not literally Plum Island, but it's where a lot of the research for Plum Island happened, was at Fort Detrick. So everything we connected, where Nixon came out when he inked that we were giving up chemical and biological research, except in the event of making defensive products to protect us against an attack. And that would be vaccines. Yes, that would be vaccines. That's why now we have a shape-shifting artificial immune system that they're working on as part of the biowarfare program. Think about it. Yeah, we could set it up and inject it into you or put it in your food and tell you that it's going to keep you safe from any infection, virus, disease that's out there, any biowarfare attack. But we also can program cells like little machines now and make them do our bidding. We can give them secret payloads that go in and make changes to your human DNA, as said in the New York Times. So we could be piggybacking on that quote unquote vaccine to do anything else we wanted to do inside your body. We just read before about it staying dormant with those little tips. Who's to say they couldn't do that? Program those tips for other things, like anytime they saw an illicit or an illicit substance in your body, they jumped into action and did something to you. I mean, I don't know. This is so insane science. And they're talking about putting stuff that they experimented with animals at Fort Detrick, Maryland, and Plum Island into your kids, guys. This should be concern for everyone. They've developed this out of the former biowarfare program. The biowarfare program that was designing things to kill people. Get it? Anyway, the ZMAP product was the result of a collaboration between MAP, which is from San Diego, and Toronto-based Dreyfus, which is a private life sciences biodefense company that collaborates with the military and public health R&D partners in the United States, Asia, and Canada. The Public Health Agency of Canada is the Dreyfus partner north of the border. So again, socialized medicine, careful what you ask for, Obamacare, because once they have you in their medical system and they're taking care of you, they're going to tell you what you need to be kept safe. They're going to tell you what is mandatory. And you will be one of millions that they'll be able to test this on as part of one of your recommended vaccinations. Far from secret, the antibody mixture prevented the death of small groups of monkeys infected with the Ebola infection. 6 of 6 monkeys survived when given antibodies 1 hour after the infection, while 4 of 6 survived when giving antibodies within 48 hours after the infection. For comparison, the doctor, do you remember that doctor who got infected with Ebola and they were trying that brand new therapy? Well, that was this. Dr. Ken Bradley did not receive ZMapp until 9 days after he showed symptoms. So thank goodness there's still enough time to make sure we go around to every community in the United States. Have them all go to their high schools like they taught us, right? Every community in the United States prepared for pandemic. back in 2005 and 2006, paid with FEMA dollars from George Bush. There's a plan. Every community has a plan for mass vaccination in the event of an emergency. Notes of caution here at the bottom. We're getting near the end. The emergency access to these antibodies has been granted with the acknowledgement that informed consent of Bradley and Wrightball that the cocktail had not been tested in humans before and carried no assurance of efficacy or safety. In this case, the patient and the medical treatment team have gauged that the potential benefit of the therapy is likely to outweigh the unknown risks. Guys, that's what Project BioShield's all about. When there's some big bad scary that's causing you to bleed out of your eyeballs and every orifice, and you've seen your loved ones die, and you go running to that pandemic center, and they're giving out this newfangled, never before tested in humans, experimental vaccine that's been sitting in the strategic stockpile as a potential savior. That's going to be informed consent when they tell you, well, we're not sure it's going to work, but it's your best chance for survival so you don't end up like Aunt Bessie. You know what? The majority of the people are going to gamble and roll the dice. And then guess what? None of that never before tested in humans all of a sudden becomes what? Oh, tested in humans. So don't worry about any of those ethical issues because it was an emergency, so we could just throw them out a window. Says, just as we in the health science exercise caution and even dismissal of anecdotal reports, the same standard for scientific and medical proof should be kept in mind for this most high-profile case of drug experimentation. And yeah, drug experimentation, that's what it's all about. You're the monkey now. Because remember, they were letting all the animals out of the research facilities. We read that story. Yep, we're not doing experiments on animals anymore. You know why? Oh, we didn't tell you that, but it's because we're doing it on humans. All right. So we got all these big companies now working on synthetic immune systems. And we got tech companies working on life sciences stuff like Google. Here's a story I ran across. One person's cancer can be fought using someone else's immune cells, study finds. We were talking about fecal transplants, transplanting gut bacteria to help boost immune system. Well, now they can even use your immune cells. For the first time, scientists have shown that even if a patient's own immune cells are incapable of recognizing and attacking tumors, someone else's immune cells might be able to. In a new study, yeah, and what about synthetic ones? That'll be next. In a new study, scientists have shown that by inserting certain components of a healthy donor immune cells, or those T cells, into the malfunctioning immune cells of a cancer patient, they can teach these cells how to recognize cancer and attack them. In a way, our findings show that the immune response in cancer patients can be strengthened, and there is more on the cancer cells that make them foreign than we can exploit, says one of the team. One way we consider doing this is finding the right donor T cells to match these neoantigens. It is now abundantly clear that existing treatments that try to kill off cancer cells by pumping the body full of harmful chemicals, aka chemo, or incredibly hot bursts of laser light, aka radiation therapy, are woefully inadequate. So scientists around the world have been looking for something called immunotherapy as the next big hope. And you know, don't think though that again, this synthetic immune system isn't going to be tied into the same project. If they can already make synthetic virus-like particles, how long is it going to be before they can make synthetic T cells and inject them into you, program them, mimic nature? And, you know, you'll never have to have cancer now, Johnny, because here, just get this injection. And that actually brings me to this last story. Engineers take the very first step toward flexible, wearable, tricorder-like devices from Star Trek. Yes, flexible and wearable. We've talked about wearables, and again, good old DARPA, Regina Duggan was involved in that, as well as Google. Engineers at the University of California, San Diego have developed the very first wearable device capable of monitoring both biochemical and electrical signals in the human body. Remember, we talked about biosensors. Here they come. The ChemFizz patch records EKGs and tracks levels of lactate, a biochemical marker that is the result of physical effort in real time. Yeah, that's the stuff that makes your muscles ache after you've exercised. The device can be worn on the chest, and it communicates wirelessly with your smartphone, smartwatch, or your laptop. We knew these were coming. Well, here they are. Could have a wide range of applications, from athletes monitoring their workouts to physicians monitoring their patients. And nano engineers, as well as electrical engineers at UC San Diego Center for Wearable Sensors, work together to build this device, which includes a flexible suite of sensors and very small electronics boards. The device also can transmit the data from biochemical and electrical signals via Bluetooth. One of our overarching goals for our research is to build wearable tricorder-like device that can measure simultaneously a whole suite of chemical, physical, and electrophysiological signals continually produced by the person throughout the day, and then they can transmit it somewhere. So, hey, Big Brother is going to be in your little nano sensor. Right now, it's going to be in your clothing. Tomorrow, you're just going to swallow Regina Duggan's little superpower pill. All right, guys, make sure you stick around. If you can even believe it, that was an hour gone quick. Mr. Kevin Blanche is live up next. We got New Chuckocelli at 3 p.m. Eastern as well. And then live Game On, 7 p.m. with Ron. Tim Kelly at 8. The boys from Primer Time, live at 9 p.m. Eastern. And then Anti-Media Radio, 2-hour edition with SM Gibson at 10 p.m. All right, guys, you have